Hi, everybody. My name is Nate Boot. I am a developer advocate for OpenSearch, and hopefully everyone is here today for the community meeting on Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Uh, that's what we're here for, right? Everyone good?
Or
Give me
the
that.
14th for those in Australia.
Oh, right.
Okay, just keep going.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a common purpose established. That is awesome. I usually have to go over some etiquette before we get everything going. Please do introduce yourself before speaking. Mute yourself unless you're actively speaking, just to avoid background noise. Cameras are, of course, optional. Not everyone is as beautiful as David Tippett over there. And questions anytime in chat or audio. We have some presenters today. If they state a preference, please do acquiesce to their preference. But otherwise, during the normal state of affairs, questions anytime in chat or audio. And of course, disruptive folks will be removed. We have not had an issue with that in quite some time. We've developed quite a loyal gathering of regulars here, so I don't anticipate any issue. It's been a long time. But of course, just in case, we've turned off screen annotations, so no drawing big noses on people. Profiles only show names. Only hosts or co-hosts can share their screen. And of course, we've got a few extras here to make sure that we can get rid of disruptors quickly. And we have at last had to remove the ability to rename yourself. So no impersonating Nate and calling people doo-doo heads. Just in case you don't remember, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Uh, I think there's still I did a filter search today for Get It by Tomorrow, and you know what? It's not too late. So just thought I'd share that with everyone just in case. I might be able to save someone's skin there. I mean, my couch is pretty comfy. I don't know about yours. Awesome. So we have two presenters today. We have Alex and Aaron from NetApp and one other compatriot, I think. They're here to talk about searchable snapshots and their recent release. And then right after that, I think Stavros Makrakis will not be making it here today, but we have Eric. Uh, thanks for waving. Who's going to be filling up all of that space for us. So it should be great. I'm looking forward to seeing all of this. Uh, David Tippett, is there anything for the good of the order before we start with the presentations?
No, I say let's just roll into it today.
Rad. Okay, Alex and Aaron, I say take it away. I'll go ahead and stop my screen share so that you can take over.
All right. Well, I'll kick off. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Alex, and I've got my colleague Arjun and also Aaron on the call. And Arjun myself will take us through the presentation today. And we're from the Instacluster team at NetApp, and specifically the OpenSearch product development team. And today we're really excited to talk about searchable snapshots, which is a recent feature we've released to our platform for OpenSearch. And we want to tell you how you can enhance the present by unlocking the past. So today we're going to go through searchable snapshots and what it is and how it works. I'll follow up with a couple of benefits of using searchable snapshots and some potential use cases. And then we'll do a quick demonstration so you can see how it works in real time, and also go through some of the things to keep in mind before we wrap up. Just before we get stuck in though, feel free to post your questions in the chat as we go. We'll probably address those at the end. So yeah, we'll do a bit of a Q&A at the end. Great. So for what is searchable snapshots and how does it work? I'll throw over to Arjun.
Thanks, Alex. All right, so I'll start by reading out a quote verbatim before I explain it a little bit further. So to start, Searchable snapshots is the fastest, cheapest, and easiest solution for storing long-term retrievable data for OpenSearch. So I think it's best explained by explaining how it works, because that's how my brain works anyway. So how does it work? OpenSearch creates snapshots, which are the same as having a backup copy of a set of indices and optionally the state of the cluster. And it's these snapshots that Searchable Snapshots, the feature, uses. These snapshots are stored in low-cost remote storage services like AWS S3, Azure Blob Storage, GCP Storage, etc. So they're not stored on the cluster itself. They're stored in a remote storage service that's much cheaper than disk. And finally, Searchable Snapshots works by performing searches directly against those snapshots that are stored on those remote storage services, rather than having to perform a full pull of indexes from those snapshots. So in how it works in terms of a user flow, the OpenSearch client will make a search request to the OpenSearch cluster, which will then perform a direct search over the snapshot that's stored on the remote storage service, which then gets returned back to the user. Some of these results may be cached based on recency, etc. This is particularly useful in scenarios where you've pulled down a wide data set and you wish to denoise your results by honing it down even further. So the subsequent searches tend to be faster. And now I'll pass it on to Alex to go over a few benefits and use cases.
Thanks, Arjun. So I just want to take us through why and when you should use searchable snapshots. And I'll start by highlighting some of the benefits. So the first key benefit for using searchable snapshots is the ability to potentially significantly reduce your cost of running your OpenSearch cluster. So by being able to search remotely stored data directly from the cluster, you can, in theory, store less data on disk in the cluster in hot storage and more of your long-term data in low-cost remote data storage solutions. But the magic of searchable snapshots is that data is still available to be searched, as Arjun said. You can also significantly reduce the amount of effort in managing long-term OpenSearch snapshots. So by being able to search remote storage directly from the cluster, you don't need to go to S3, find the index you're looking for, download it back into the cluster, potentially spin up extra infrastructure, and then do the search, which is potentially a lot of extra steps. You can just do that search directly from the cluster, so it's much easier. And lastly, you can significantly reduce the footprint of your cluster. And to illustrate this example, I'll just take us through a bit of an example. So we were talking to a customer recently, and they came to us and said, well, we're inducing a large amount of data, so about 450 gigabytes a day. And what we're doing is storing all of that data for a year, which ends up to be quite a lot of data, so 162 terabytes on disk. And they're doing that because they have some compliance requirements around being able to immediately retrieve that data. So it has to be retrievable in the event of some sort of audit log or some sort of security event. And in this scenario, you'd actually require a very large cluster. So this is a bit simplistic, but at its very basic level, you'd need 3 cluster manager nodes and about 36 data nodes. So obviously, you'd probably throw in a few dashboard nodes and maybe some ingest nodes on top of that, but this is a very simplistic example. But this is a very large cluster and very expensive to run and quite hard to manage. However, with searchable snapshots, it's a completely different story. So we're still ingesting 450 gigabytes a day. That's not changing. But what we said is, let's be a little bit smarter about the way we're storing that data. So we know that data is more required to be accessed more sooner in its life cycle than later. So let's store 90 days of your data, the most recent 90 days on disk in the cluster, so it's immediately available. But then let's maybe move that oldest data that you're not accessing as frequently into remote storage. And the magic of searchable snapshots is that data is still essentially immediately available. It's not as quick, the latency is not as quick, but it's still there. You can still do that search, and it's still essentially available. So you can do a search. And in this scenario, it's a very different story. So we still need our free cluster manager nodes, but we can reduce the data nodes to 9. And as I said, move that 90-day plus data into remote storage. It's still searchable. It's still there. We're not just shipping it off and leaving there. You can commit those searches from the cluster. So it's really good. And in this scenario, and this is why we're really excited about searchable snapshots, we're actually able to reduce the cluster size by 70%. So you can imagine the cost savings, the management overhead of this cluster is much smaller now. And that's the great benefit of searchable snapshot. Just to touch on some of the conversations we're having around searchable snapshots with people running OpenSearch. Searchable snapshots is fantastic for data lifecycle management. If you are storing long-term data, you can age over that older data into remote storage when you don't maybe need to access that data as frequently. So like the example I just showed. A number of people might have compliance requirements such as PCI. In these scenarios, there's a number of requirements for the amount of time you need to store data, and also that ability to retrieve it in the event of some sort of audit or security event. You can do that really well with searchable snapshots, and you can do it more effectively, cost effectively. And also, as we already talked about this morning, modern applications generate a lot of logs, and that's certainly the case. We run an internal OpenSearch cluster, and our security team really love the ability to be able to use searchable snapshots to retrieve that data really quickly, whereas before it was quite a time-intensive process. So enough from me. I'm going to throw it over to the exciting part. So Arjun's going to take us through a demo.
Thanks, Alex. All right, so now we're going to look at how searchable snapshots is used in action. So to start with, we can either proceed with this demo through a whole bunch of REST API requests, or we can do all of it through the magic of OpenSearch dashboards. And I love GUI, and I think GUI is better for demos. So let's do it the dashboards way. So here I've got OpenSearch dashboards loaded up. I've got a running OpenSearch cluster, and I've already loaded the sample data set for weblogs. So that's as easy as just clicking on here and then loading the sample data set that you want. The next thing you'll want to do for configuration purposes is to just set up a repository, which will tell OpenSearch where to store the actual snapshots. So for this, I've set up demo repository. It's easy to create a repository. The main thing to do here is that you'll want to make sure you've selected custom configuration. And then depending on your storage technology, for example, S3, you'll want to add in the configuration details for S3 here, for example, which is the name of the bucket and the path under which these snapshots will be stored. So that'll tell OpenSearch where to store the snapshots. The next step for this demo is to create a snapshot. There are two ways to go about this. We can either take a manual snapshot, which is easy enough to do through OpenSearch dashboards again. I've already created a demo snapshot here. The main thing to do when you're creating a snapshot is to make sure you've selected the repository that you just created. Or you can create a snapshot policy, which will allow you to create snapshots on regular intervals, which is the more normal kind of use case. So daily, hourly, or monthly, etc. And then finally, what we'll want to do is to make sure that we have restored the index from the snapshot that we've created. So this restore is a little bit different. Nice. I know I've said restore, but it's not actually a full restore. Here I've got a sample request of that restore. So I'm restoring the demo snapshot that I created under the demo repository. The main property to note here is the storage type property, which has the value remote snapshot. So this tells OpenSearch that this isn't just a regular restore, it's a searchable snapshot index that you're creating. So you don't actually need to download all of the data. All it does do is just pull down some very basic information that's more like metadata for the snapshot. And so I'll trigger this, and now my searchable snapshots index has been restored. Now, the great thing about this is that you can actually perform a search on the searchable snapshots index, just like you can with any other index. So just going to apply that. So here is my restored index, and I'm just going to apply a very simple generic search here, and boom, we've gotten the results. So that's pretty much how searchable snapshots works in action. You can use it to query your restored searchable snapshot indices just like any other index. Now, doubling back to some considerations to keep in mind if you're planning to use searchable snapshots, and Alex had touched on some of these before. The first is that the latency for searches are expected to be higher when using searchable snapshots than using a regular locally stored index. And that is because it has to perform searches over the network using the snapshot that's stored on the remote storage service. The next thing is that the indices that are restored for searchable snapshots are read-only, which means you can't update or index new documents on them. And the third is that after you perform your search on a searchable snapshot index, the results are discarded. There's a small asterisk there, which is that there is a cache that you can configure on the cluster, and that cache can store some results to speed up subsequent queries. And the fourth is that because it's performing searches against a remote storage service, there can be some additional object storage retrieval costs. And now back to Alex.
Thanks, Arjun. So I'll just wrap up with a couple of things. Here's a couple of resources if you're interested in finding out more information about searchable snapshots. Obviously, the OpenSearch website has a lot of information to find out more, but David's just posted a few links in the chat there, so click through to those if you're interested in finding out more. So I just want to wrap up by giving a few takeaways. So searchable snapshots, as Arjun said at the beginning, is the cheapest, fastest, and easiest way to store long-term retrievable data for OpenSearch. This is the case because it allows you to store your long-term data in remote storage and query it directly from the cluster. So no need to go through the effort of restoring that full snapshot back. You can just do that search as Arjun has showed us. And also, it can save you money, time, effort, as well as helping you more effectively manage your data lifecycle. So that is all we have for today. And yeah, we'd love to answer any questions you might have.
I was gonna say, if there are no questions, I have like a dozen, but I'm gonna give
Yeah.
give some time for other community members to ask first.
Sounds like the floor is yours, David.
I know. All right. I was gonna ask. One of the things I was thinking through is, how is this affected when you do like cluster upgrades? Like, say we've got 6 months, we do a cluster upgrade. You know, whether it's minor or major version upgrade. Does that data need to be reindexed or reprocessed, or is that generally supported across versions?
So I think I can answer this. Thankfully, with minor version updates and patch version updates, OpenSearch has been following somewhere pretty well. And that just like with any other kind of index, we've never seen the need for performing a reindex or a mapping of any kind because thankfully no breaking changes have been made. So yay.
Awesome. And then What's kind of the memory impact? So I imagine you're loading a lot of metadata. You're going to have to pull a lot of data from these remote stores. I mean, is that just a typical pattern? You're going to pull it all in memory and then, um, not all of it, but filtered from the remote store.
So the cache that exists on the cluster that can be configured for searchable snapshots is totally optional and configurable. But it does take its disk, unless anyone else wants to correct me. It's disk that we have identified that it consumes more than memory itself. So for what it's worth, the way that we have configured it is we just take up some percentage of the disk.
Interesting. Awesome.
Yeah, it's David. It's caching the files it's pulling, or parts of the files it's pulling down from the remote store onto disk. The sort of memory
Ah,
requirements are essentially the same as any other search for index. But that cache allows you to avoid the round trip latencies with the remote store on subsequent searches of the same data.
awesome.
And it's different from like a request cache, where it's like if you do an identical request, will cache the results. It's caching the data. So if you do a different query that addresses the same piece of the data, the files, then it can leverage the cache to answer a completely different query as long as it's using the same data.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Very
and we've
cool.
seen this in practice when we've tried previously to specifically query for something wider and then denoise and hone the filters down.
That's super cool.
So I imagine that if you had data that you don't mind query latency on, you could even use kind of the long-term storage options in S3 as well. Because that shouldn't change the nature of reading the stuff. You just might have to, uh, but gosh, what do they call it? The S3 infrequently accessed is what it is. So like using those can even further save you a few dollars here and there, which probably adds up if you're taking in that much data.
It's huge. Um,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah. We've looked at the different sort of, so it's compatible with those different S3 tiers as well. So that's definitely an option. Yeah.
Very cool. This may be a silly question, but I'm asking it because I feel like someone else might have this as well. To you guys, does it support vectors? And can you tell us, like, have you tested with that at all? I
We
know it's not a typical use case, but I'm sure someone's going to try it.
so
Do you
we
know,
at
Ashwin?
NetApp haven't tested that yet.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but it works just like searching over any other index. Probably yes. Maybe someone else from the OpenSearch team might be able to answer that with a bit more accuracy.
Yeah, I don't imagine a snapshot of a vector database would be much different, whether it's stored on S3 or locally. But again, that's speculation. That's not my area of expertise.
Okay, I'm calling now someone in the community to go try it this week and let us know what happens because I'd be curious. I know there are a lot of people who are doing interesting things with vectors, so be interesting to see if the performance is similar, the same as with regular searchable snapshots.
Awesome. Well, there any more questions for our first presenters? Okay. Well, thanks for starting us off, team. I sure appreciate it. It's always good to have guests and presenters, and uh, sometimes it's hard to go first, so I appreciate that. So it
Thanks,
looks
Zach.
like it looks like Stavros joined us a little bit ago. Stavros, are you going to be able to do your thing with Eric here? Should I make will you need to share your screen? Should I make you a co-host?
I think I'll need to be co-host to
Okay.
share my screen.
Floor is yours. Thank you.
All right. Are we up? Excellent.
Up.
All right. Stavros, jump in as needed, right? So just to remind you all, talked a little bit about this project that's sort of codenamed User Behavior Logging, UBL. And there is the RFC that's now been out for 2 weeks, and we've gotten some great comments on it. Another one today. So been really appreciative of all the feedback. But one of the things that we noticed when we started talking about this project with Stavros was that, user behavior logging. Logging is a term that, we refer to all the time in the OpenSearch community. It means a lot of different things. Didn't really feel like it captured quite what we were trying to do. And, is user behavior exactly what we're trying to do? And we wanted to come up with a name, right? So, let's see. So we needed a name, and we thought, who better to reach out to than the community? So what I'm here to ask from you today is to help us vote on what is the future name of the user behavior logging effort. So we got 27 entries from a broad group of people. So lots of different names, including, of course, Loggy McLogface, right? Very glad that someone put in a funny name like that. And, the names were from sort of serious, generic, very specific, very cool, very, all sorts of different styles. And so I met last week with Stavros, myself, James and Chris. And we went through and did a pass of like, okay, what are the names for this component? And it was a really interesting conversation because it definitely gave some thoughts for the future as OpenSearch community grows, as we bring more people in. How do we want to name things? What are our standards, etc.? So that was a really good exercise that I think will pay off dividends in the future. And so we went through, and one of the things that we did realize was we kind of had to filter out some of maybe the more creative names that were really going to trigger some sort of trademark review, right? We had to pick a name that, wouldn't trigger. We have to have a trademark lawyer go investigate it. It's going to take a 6-month process, or otherwise involve a legal team. So little sad, but also slightly relieved that we could go ahead and come up with a name. So we came up with 4 candidates. So drum roll here. Da-da-da. There are our 4 candidate names. So they're all kind of revolving around the same area of trying to understand better, what are our users trying to do? What is their behavior? What can we deduce from them? Our users, it's not just a single query, a single interaction. It's a journey. And what does that mean? And what are they doing? What can we divine from what they're doing, right? So all the names are sort of flavors on the same sort of insights, idea, intelligence. And of course, user behavior logging might just be the name that we want to use. So these are our 4 names that are out there. Chris went ahead up, and if you're not already a member on the forum, this is a great reason to go sign up on the forum. There is the link, and I think David will paste it into chat for me. And so we just put this up, and we're looking for sort of, voting. You get, you can vote multiple times. We'll see what kind of floats to the top. I really like the idea that we sort of have a query insights component that's very interested in what's happening with an individual query, like insights into one query, whereas we're looking more at that journey or the behavior of the user overall insight. So I like the query insights, search journey insights sort of alliteration of those component names. But there's a couple other flavors in here. So yeah, and so the voting is open. and it's open until February 23rd. And at that point, we'll pick a name, right? Subject to final vetting. We will pick the name, and then we'll be publishing the repos that have both the plugin code for this user behavior UBL logging, the dashboard. We'll actually publish those repos under that code name. You'll see a formal project under the OpenSearch project GitHub account, and we'll start actually generating a lot more code. So that was kind of the big thing I wanted to share. So I'll take a stop there. Kind of questions there. Let's see if I can open this up.
I have a statement. Go vote now. Don't wait. Just do
Yeah.
it. We've
So
already gotten 3 more since we've been here. So
excellent, excellent. That's what we need, right? So let's see how it goes. So yeah, so really excited to kind of be able to try and do this as much as a community effort. And then, of course, not too late to add more comments on here. You can see that the conversation's been going well. People are adding comments and feedback. And so really appreciate all of that. So, okay. Any other kind of questions, comments? So terrific.
well, thank you. I'm really excited. This is one of those things I feel like not just within the open search community, but just like across all search communities has been absent for some time. So I'm really excited to see what this turns into.
Yeah.
Mostly because I don't understand it myself. So I'm gonna look for lots of what is it? Small or smarter people. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we will be looking in a very soon community meetup to do sort of a walkthrough of the first demo. We'll be looking at maybe using the our very own documentation website search and instrumenting it to start
Nice.
understanding what kinds of questions people are struggling with. We have a couple of other ideas. So,
It's gonna be huge. I see the votes rolling in too. Thank you guys.
this
If
is
you haven't
great.
voted, vote now.
So,
Just gonna go tweet about this. Thank you.
yes. All right. Thank you very much. I think that's all I have for today, Nathan.
Wonderful. Well, as always, we appreciate everyone coming by to present and share and draw attention to whatever it is that they need. So you're always welcome if you have anything else to share. So now I think we have no more presenters. So if anyone has anything for the good of the order or is just curious about anything, David, is there anything keeping you up at night that you want to share with the audience?
Yes, yes. Actually, I'm gonna share the link once I can find it again for our release of version 2.12. Just a call out to the community. If you guys have things that are outstanding currently that are blocking the release, I would ask that you go and remediate those things. It takes a lot for us to get release artifacts out. So as soon as we can, we'd like to get a formal release for 2.12. So um, thank you all. I've dropped that in the chat. If you have something outstanding, we know who you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to say we know who you are, and we aren't going to hunt you down. Someone may hunt you down though. Hopefully, one of our maintainers. So, thanks everyone though. Really appreciate all the work that's gone into this next release, and it's going to be big.
Did the AI assistant make it into 2.12?
To the AI. No, I don't think that's. I don't know when that's going to be GA. I don't think that was in this
Okay.
release.
Because there was some setup that had to go along with it to be able to type questions at your data.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Cool. Well, does anyone have any questions? Is anyone new that wants to introduce themselves? Like, it's a pretty safe space here, I think. I mean, these are all pretty familiar names. Nothing?
Do we know when the 2024 release schedule is supposed to be finalized? I saw that sort of in progress, coming up soon.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm not involved in some of those meetings there.
Yeah. Uh, I think this kind of comes down to the project PMC or PMC, is that right? What are we calling ours? Project Leadership Committee. That's what it is, not PMC. I'm getting all my leadership committees mixed up. But yeah. So if you haven't already, let me throw that out there as well. This is our proposed release schedule for the upcoming year. So if you have thoughts, comments, or testimonials about why we should or should not release on certain days, whether that is local religious holidays or anything like that, please feel free to drop that in.
Yeah, we can't release while Mercury is in retrograde. Is that are
Yeah, that
the
would be
planet
a
alignment
bad move. Yeah,
those calculations?
yeah.
So,
That's a joke.
It could have not been a joke though. I don't know.
Yeah,
No judgment here.
I've been places. Okay, well, if there's nothing else from the community, I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. It looks like you'll get 19 minutes of your lives back. I'd like to thank our presenters once again.
Thank you all.
Please do. I'd like to reiterate that anyone is welcome to show and tell here. And if you, even if you just think you did something cool and you're proud of it, and it doesn't have to be some groundbreaking contribution to the arts or sciences or anything like that. Like, come share the fun stuff that you're working on, even if it is of no practical value to anyone but yourself. We enjoy seeing the enthusiasm. So please don't feel like you have to do something groundbreaking to share and have a cool audience.
I was gonna say,
And with
don't
that,
tempt me.
my 5-year-old son learned a joke at school. I'd like to share it with you before we
Oh, dear.
close up here. What do you call a dead dolphin? Anything you want. I don't know why it's a dead dolphin. That just happened to be the subject of the joke, but thank you, public school. That's just something I can't unknow now. So thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Oh, you're welcome.